The United States used a missile with blades coming out of it to kill a militia leader in Iraq. An Israeli PSYOP was uncovered with pretty graphic stuff. And Netanyahu responds to the Hamas ceasefire terms, pretty much shooting it all down. So let's get into it. I'm recording this at 9 a.m. Central on Thursday, February 8th, 2024. Overnight, we got news that at least 2 Kataib Hezbollah leaders were killed alongside one of their bodyguards in a U.S. strike in Baghdad yesterday. According to U.S. Central Command, they say at 9:30 p.m. Baghdad time, U.S. Central Command forces conducted a unilateral strike in Iraq in response to the attacks on U.S. service members, killing a Kataib Hezbollah commander responsible for directly planning and participating in attacks on U.S. forces in the region. There are no indications of collateral damage or civilian casualties at this time. While that statement was from the United States, I have not seen anything from Iraq, Iran, or any other Middle Eastern sources at this point saying that there was collateral damage or civilian casualties. So it does appear that this strike only killed the 3 people that were targeted here. The names that we have so far: Abu Bakr al-Sadi, a senior Kataib Hezbollah commander, and then Arkan al-Alawi, a sub-commander within Kataib Hezbollah. Neither of these are the overall leaders of that organization. Again, Sadi, the more senior commander, and then it sounds like the third person here may have been a bodyguard or another member of Kataib Hezbollah traveling with those 2. There was one source I saw that said this vehicle and these people belong to the Iraqi Popular Mobilization Forces, which I think it can be true. It's entirely possible that that's true. This is one of those cases where 2 things can be true at once. Kataib Hezbollah is a part of Iraq's Popular Mobilization Forces, which is kind of a state-run militia, if you will. And they have fought against Islamic State alongside U.S. forces for a long time. And there are groups in the PMF that are very closely aligned with the United States. There are other groups in the PMF, like Kataib Hezbollah, that are very, very closely aligned with Iran and also fall under this Iranian, Houthi, Hezbollah axis of resistance. Kataib Hezbollah is one of the major organizations that kind of sits in both of those camps. Now, we talked a few days ago about, or after the U.S. soldiers were killed in Jordan, I said there were 3 tiers of response to be on the lookout for. The first was the targeting of launch sites and weapon storage locations that were used in attacks against U.S. forces. We already saw that. The first large wave of U.S. attacks, the B-1s that flew over from the United States earlier this week and struck multiple locations across Iraq and Syria, that was essentially Tier 1. It was hitting the facilities and locations. The second tier I talked about was the targeting of senior Hamas or senior militia leaders across Iraq and Syria. That's what we just saw in the last 24 hours. So this is kind of the second tier, the targeting of the personnel in these groups that are attacking U.S. forces in both of those countries. The third tier, there's no real indications that this is or isn't coming, but I talked about the possibility that the U.S. could target Iranian IRGC members in Iraq or Syria that are serving as liaisons, either helping to equip, arm, or provide targeting to these various militias across the region. Maybe. The U.S. has hinted from the very beginning here that this is not going to be a one-and-done type campaign, that it could take days, weeks, or even months of continued strikes against some of these targets. For now, my guess would be that what we're going to see in the coming days are going to be more strikes against some of these Iranian-backed militia leaders across the region. Now, there was some shrapnel recovered, if you will, parts of ammunition that suggested that what was used in this strike was the R9X Hellfire missile, which makes sense if you look at the target, the location, the aftermath, all of that. The R9X is a variant of the Hellfire that does not have an explosive warhead like all other ones do. Instead, it has these blades that pop out, and it's designed to be used. It's actually used against Ayman al-Zawahiri, the then leader of al-Qaeda in Kabul a couple of years back. It's designed to really limit collateral damage. No explosive warhead, it's going to do that. In this case, when you look at the damage to the vehicle, of course, is significant. But even when we're not hearing collateral damage or civilian casualties mentioned from Iraq or anyone else, you can see why. This target was struck in the middle of a residential area on a busy street at night when there were a lot of other people around. This missile, the way that it's designed to work is, it's a 100-pound missile flying down out of the sky at subsonic speed, is the official speed of the Hellfire missile. It's going to do damage against a vehicle, right? So even without that explosive warhead, you see some pictures. We'll see if I can share some of the pictures here, or if those get pulled down. But the vehicle is completely destroyed, and we've seen this warhead be used very, very successfully in precision-type strikes in Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, and elsewhere. Now, in turning to reactions around the world to this, a lot being pulled from the Islamic resistance in Iraq. Pretty similar statements across that group. The Axis of Resistance, just about everybody chimed in. Hezbollah came out saying they condemn the strikes and they celebrate, the martyrdom of these leaders in the Kataib Hezbollah movement. Al-Nujaba has kind of been the more extreme group as of late. If you remember, just about a week ago, Kataib Hezbollah said, we're going to stop attacks against U.S. forces moving to a defensive posture. Al-Nujaba came out and said, not us, we're going to keep attacking. They put out a statement following the strike calling on everybody, all Iraqis, to pick up arms and to fight the Americans. They are sounding more and more as the most aggressive of these militias in the region. Hamas put out a statement saying, we strongly condemn the brutal aggression against the Iraqi capital, which led to the martyrdom of Iraqi resistance leaders. Then most notably, I think, was a statement put out by the spokesperson for the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Iraq, when he said, who served alongside American forces for a long time, said the American forces jeopardize civil peace, violate Iraqi sovereignty, and disregard the safety and lives of our citizens. Even more concerning is that the coalition consistently deviates from the reasons and objectives for its presence in our territory. This trajectory compels the Iraqi government more than ever to terminate the mission of this coalition, which has become a factor for instability and threatens to entangle Iraq in the cycle of conflict. A couple things to keep in mind with this. Iran has very heavy influence across Iraq. Within their government, within their military, there's a very strong Iranian influence. Iran wants the United States out of the region. So there's something you always have to keep back of mind whenever you hear anybody in Iraq saying the U.S. has to go. You have to keep in mind that there might be some Iranian influence to that, to a degree. On the other hand, it's not crazy ever for any country to say we don't want another country inside of our territory. And if you put yourself in the shoes of the Iraqis right now, where in the last week or so, the United States on multiple occasions has carried out these strikes against targets in their country without telling Iraq what they're going to hit or when they're going to hit them, you can see how that would very easily trigger somebody to say, enough's enough, get out of here. So notable that senior leaders in Iraq are again pointing to this strike, saying it's time for the United States to leave. I wouldn't write this off entirely as Iranian propaganda, as Iran is backing these folks. That is an aspect of this overall conflict. But more and more pushback from Iraq in terms of the U.S. presence there as of late. Then shifting down to the Red Sea, the Houthis just haven't stopped, at all. And I would expect in the coming days we're going to see more strikes by the U.S. and U.K. against Houthi targets in Yemen. As President Biden said a few weeks ago, are the strikes against the Houthis working? No. Are they going to continue? Yes. And what we're seeing right now is that they really aren't working. So just in the last 24 hours, U.S. Central Command said that they conducted self-defense strikes against 2 Houthi mobile anti-ship cruise missiles prepared to launch against ships in the Red Sea. And then a few hours later, CENTCOM conducted another strike against a Houthi mobile land attack cruise missile that was also prepared to launch. This is every day. Every day, either the U.S. is attacking targets in Yemen in self-defense, as these two were stated, these missiles were prepared to launch, or they're intercepting drones, missiles, or USVs launched by the Houthis, or these missiles and drones are striking or nearly missing commercial vessels. That whole situation, Red Sea, Gulf of Aden, Houthis, hasn't slowed, not even in the least. So again, I would expect some sort of follow-on strikes by the U.S. and U.K. here in the next couple days. Then following an initial report by the Israeli paper Haaretz, the IDF confirmed that members of their psychological warfare unit ran a Telegram channel titled 72 Virgins, veered towards influencing the Israeli public. A straight-up Israeli PSYOP being conducted by the IDF was uncovered and eventually shut down, or according to the IDF, they shut it down and dealt with it. But it's the kind of thing, everything is people always throw that term out there. This is a PSYOP for this, that, or the other organization. In this case, it actually was. But it's the kind of thing that makes you wonder how much more is out there just floating around from any country, from any organization, around any topic when something like this comes to light. So they say the channel's administrators posted graphic content, including videos in which the bodies of Hamas militants can be seen, accompanied by the caption, "Shatter the terrorists' fantasies." They also posted images and videos of the elimination of Hamas militants and footage of the Gaza Strip urging their followers to share the content so that, quote, everyone can see that we're screwing them. They said the channel also, at times, was sharing exclusive information from IDF investigations, which probably tipped the paper's hand. Like, this information isn't public yet. How does this one administrator on this random Telegram channel have it? It probably starts to open that door to this might have some sort of connection to the actual IDF. They say the videos and images on the channel included the dead bodies of Palestinian civilians and fighters alongside text saying, quote, exterminating the roaches, exterminating the Hamas rats, share this beauty. And then the IDF was reached for comment here. Their spokesperson told Haaretz that following an investigation, it was found out that the Telegram page was operated by the IDF without authorization and without authority. The incident has since been dealt with, end quote. So yesterday we talked about Hamas's terms for a possible ceasefire in Gaza. At the time, and you look at yesterday's video, I said I think this is probably a little over the top. It sounds like Hamas is kind of dictating terms of surrender to Israel, and I'm not really sure that's an accurate reflection of the situation on the ground. But we got some feedback from Netanyahu overnight. He essentially shot the whole thing down. So he said, quote, surrender to Hamas's delusional demands that we've just heard not only would not bring about the freedom of the hostages, but it would only invite an additional slaughter. It would invite disaster for Israel that no Israeli citizens want. There is no alternative to the military collapse of Hamas. There will not be a civilian collapse of Hamas rule without a military one. The day after is the day after Hamas. Israel will ensure that Gaza is demilitarized forever, a goal which will be achieved through Jerusalem retaining the freedom to act in Gaza wherever and whenever it needs to ensure that terror does not again raise its head. So there's some mumblings that there might be room for negotiation here on the ceasefire, but again, the terms that the two parties, from my perspective, are very far apart at this point. It seems as though Israel will not move forward until Hamas is gone, eliminated as a military entity with no ability to function as a civilian entity at all. And Israel wants to maintain security control over Gaza. Those things haven't really changed from October 7th. When the stated aims of this war came out, Israel has largely stuck to those. Hamas, on the other hand, continues to dictate terms like the IDF will leave, release all of the Palestinian prisoners. They're very, very far apart right now. Again, some rumblings that there might be working towards a solution, but if that's the case, the public posturing is very, very different from what is happening behind closed doors. So we'll just have to wait and see. But that's all I got for now. Of course, if interested in this or other national security subjects, be sure to check out my Substack. Links in the description below. Just put out another article yesterday talking about some issues that Iran is having domestically, especially around Afghanistan. Not just terrorism, but also transnational crime, smuggling, illegal migration, and water rights. I think it's pretty interesting and applies to a lot of what we're talking about in these videos, and it's free, so check it out below if interested. But thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.